So despite fall being the season where you're supposed to just find a really good book and find a really good blanket and then plant yourself on the couch and enjoy both of those things simultaneously, I neglected to do that. I didn't finish a single book in September. I started 2 books. I was like tandem reading 2 very different books. Large books, might I add. I will say I have been like a teensy bit distracted because my partner and I adopted a dog. So that's been partially taking up all of my time. And he's not very good at reading yet, but we'll get there. We will get there. What I did start in September was Super Visible, the story of women in Marvel Comics, which was just like an eye grab, eye candy off of the new bookshelf at my library, but it is full of oral histories, interviews, art from different comics that they're talking about, references, photos from conventions and offices and stuff like that. It starts you at the very beginning of Marvel, and then you kind of speed forward quite a bit because guess what? There weren't very many women in the beginning. I picked this up hoping to get like a better grasp of 2 things. One, what the process is like and what jobs like need to happen for a comic book to like land in my hands. Yeah, mission accomplished. It was really cool. I got to learn a little bit more about like the structure of Marvel as a business. Secondly, I wanted to kind of like start from a ground zero where like I could maybe be recognizing the names from here as I'm browsing in my local shop, because maybe you have 5 names on the cover of something, they're probably last names, so that's not really telling you much about who wrote it, and then you don't necessarily know like who did what because it's just the names, it's not like what they did. It also brought out things and people that I was like, oh yeah, that clicks, like Jen Bartel, who's done like the covers of all of the She-Hulk books that I really like. There was a big chunk of Rainbow Rowell in here, who is an author that I love. There's a Black Widow series that I really want to go find. And then it's probably time for me to tackle X-Men. I just don't know where to do that, where to start. So this was a really good read, but I was finding myself reading it like piece by piece while I simultaneously read comic books. But I also pulled one of the biggest books off of my physical TBR, and that is The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. Somebody in my local library book club, where we all show up and just talk about what we're reading as long as it's a little bit queer, mentioned this a couple of months ago, and I was like, ooh, I should probably get around to it. And then it took me a couple months to get around to it. It is a story of a 4-member family, and the book is chunked out essentially into 4 parts, where you hear from the mother, the father, the son, and the daughter. And it is about them like struggling during a recession, and their family is very like dependent upon the father's business, and then you just kind of, through these generational point of views, you get like glimpses at like the grandparents or siblings and aunts and uncles and cousins and like neighbors even that really help or like were part of this family's life. I went into it not knowing the premise. The only thing I knew was that one of the character POVs is just completely free of punctuation, and there was never like a good point to stop and process what I had just learned from this character. In the end, I don't feel like I was rewarded for reading this big of a book. I think this is a lesson, and you don't have to read what the internet tells you you should read. After finishing that, I knew I needed something that I could really blow through, complete change of pace, so I picked up a book that had been gifted to me by a friend who I do very much so trust to give me recommendations, and I was right to pick this one up, My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. This was a cool book. It was about a girl who, actually, I'm not going to tell you. As I mentioned with The Bee Sting, I love going into a book as blind as I possibly can, and I would recommend that people do that with this, with the caveat that you should check the trigger warnings here. It takes place in like 1999, 2000, so it is just like far enough back to have that time setting be interesting, yet it still feels like normal everyday life, which I thought was really, really neat. As I was reading this, I was just like, how the hell did Ottessa like write this? Attention to detail without over explaining is so unique, and it just kept me flipping through the pages, and I actually cannot wait to read everything else written by this author, because there's actually many things. And then not to mention how beautiful this book is. Like, this is a very fun cover, but then the hot pink is a really nice touch, might I add. So that was exactly what I needed to pull me out of my fall slump. I'd also picked up from my local library volumes 3 and 4 of Ryan North's Fantastic Four run. This is something that I've just kind of been enjoying in the background, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. I wanted to start reading the Fantastic Four after seeing the movie that recently came out, but I didn't know where to start, and I ultimately settled on starting with like the current run at the beginning, and I think that was a great choice. But as I read more and more, I do like want to go back to the old Jack Kirby stuff because I think it would be super interesting. I'm getting a little bit better at being able to read multiple universes or multiple storylines of like the same characters. I'm reading like, I think I'm up to 4 versions of Spider-Man right now. With that, what I do want to mention is the comic books that I've recently picked up. I have so seriously been enjoying Ultimate Spider-Man. We're on 22 right now, and allegedly there are only a couple of more issues left, and then they're just gonna wrap this series up. So I hope we're in for a, wow, that was done really nicely, and I respect their decision to know exactly where they were going with it rather than dragging it on, but I can't help but be a little bit sad because I love it when it is an Ultimate Spider-Man week at my local comic book shop. Next up, I picked up the first issue of Spider-Man Noir, which is a ton of fun. It is still the Spider-Man that like you would be familiar with, but it just is definitely like a more adult take, less your friendly neighborhood and more like badass crime fighting. It's just cool. I do think that this specific cover kind of gives you a very good visual cue of like what you're getting into versus one like this. I am still so wound up about Exquisite Corpses. This book gets me to my comic book shop as soon as I can on the Wednesdays that it comes out. I would assume that we're about halfway through this. If we're on 6, I think there's gonna be 12. But this guy on the cover, particularly Nurse Pete, is my least favorite. I cannot stand this guy. Exquisite Corpses is definitely like my top comic right now. It's, like I said, what gets me to the store, but also on a week when I come home from the store, like I have to sit down and read it. Like I'm not letting that sit on my shelf for a very long time. Lastly, I'll throw in something new that I've discovered, which is Everything Dead and Dying, which is brand new. This is issue number 2, a post-apocalyptic zombie western, everything that I love, actually. It is queer, it is small town, it is an unfolding mystery, it is giving like early Walking Dead, but also it is so sincere, and the character building seems so far to be very, very intentional, but also the timing and like the paneling as you read, specifically issue 1, but issue 2 does a good job of it still. It blows my mind. It is so careful. The coloring is really, really intentional, and I'm having such a fun time picking these up and like seeing imagery come out for them, because I truly don't think I would be happy just like scheduling to get A covers all the time. Like I like going in and seeing what my options are, because truly all of the variants are like hard to pick from. Heading into November, I think I'm gonna continue reading Revival. I am about 1/3 of the way through the full series. This thing is a beast. It is heavy. It is beautiful. I probably should have been reading it during spooky season, but what I had done was I stopped essentially as close as I could to where season 1 of the show wrapped up, but I would like to be ahead if it comes back. I hope it comes back. So I think this is what I'm going to start with. Another book that I absolutely know I will get to in November because I just picked it up, which is The Devil She Knows by Alexandra Bellafleur. I can't express to you how cool I think this is as an item. First of all, you have one of my favorite queer WLW authors. Like, you cannot do better than AB. But my favorite, also WLW, Instagram artist, cover art. This is like an absolute perfect mashup in my head. Look at it. So I don't actually know anything other than the premise of this book revolving around an elevator, and that's exactly all I want to know going into it, because I don't need to know anything else. So I will see you at the library, I will see you in my next wrap up, and I will see you for whatever else I decide to make in between. But so far it's been a slow fall for me, and I hope that you're doing better than I am. But also, if you're not, that's okay, and books are on our shelves for reasons and for seasons, and that's a lesson I've learned this month.